Hi everyone, welcome again in the series with Varnan Films. We are celebrating 10 years with 10 wonderful stories. Today we have this amazing person that I have known for many years now. His name is Dr. Shomeshwar Singh. Thank you so much, Doctor, to join us today. I want to start, with your introduction, because when it comes to like doctor, we have like like a typical persona in the mind. Right now, you look like an artist, or like not so doctor. So tell us about you.
So I think I was trying to sort of as this whole research story started with CSound Live that we will talk about. Somehow it was around the same time that I kind of sort of I think dared to sort of not get a haircut, and then it kind of it just kept growing like that, and somewhere I feel the two are linked. I think research and creativity and thinking differently and thinking out of the box also gets you to not get a prim and proper haircut and a tie. Like there is some link there. And then I just started really enjoying it. And so the long hair became a ponytail now, which was more a result of COVID and no haircuts and sunshine and summers. So now I've become this, but I kind of I'm happy with it. With my own doctor looks. I think my concern for what will a patient think and all that is not there at all. It's not there in my system. Like I'm like, what do I care now? What does he's got to figure out whether I'm right or wrong for him. Like that's his problem. So I don't have that. I'm not in that competition. I'm not in a shop wherein I'm trying to be the best practitioner. And I think that also some way comes out with all this. Like, it's like, whatever, I'm here and this is how I am. I'm neat and clean. And, and you should, I don't know how you figure out whether I'm serious or not, but that's your problem. So in the practice part, I just don't worry. But in fact, I think it's been fine. Like, I don't really see any apprehension on the part of a patient who thinks why I'm not a very completely conventional looking doctor. But I think it's all good.
It's very interesting because you just mentioned about being unconventional, right? And not in terms of just the looks, but also the kind of work you have been doing, especially in the field of ENT. Do you want to just take us through, how you started and, what you have been doing, especially like, how we it got introduced through Cochlear and all that. And then coming to CSound Live, what is the timeline? How do you put this thing in a timeline?
Yeah, so really the way it happened was that so after my post-graduation in India, then we were in the UK for almost 9 years. And really more as at the time in UK in around 2002, more as means of climbing up the training ladder and getting the right jobs and the right training opportunity. I ended up in a research job in London. In this very famous hospital called Great Ormond Street Hospital, and this was a 2-year research job on cochlear implants. Cochlear implants was very topical and very right on top even then, and so the opportunity to do research in cochlear implants just came to me. It just came to me, and therefore I decided to go with it, which resulted in 2 years of basic science research in cochlear implants. What I did was a doctorate, which primarily involves you to do research. It's not classes that you sit in. More time was spent in pubs and coffee shops right outside the hospital, than inside. And that kind of really set me off on this cochlear implant story, because I had now already worked with the best surgeons, researchers, audiologists. The Great Ormond Street Hospital cochlear implant program is like the #1 spot to be. I remember starting with a friend just before joining that training job, and I said, what do you think, this research job, low on pay, but Great Ormond Street Hospital? And he said, jharu lagane ko denge wahan par, to wo bhi theek hai. That was his response. Go for it. So I was like, okay. So, and it was not just, I think, and now when I look back, like I'm so into research that obviously the seeds, were sowed at that time, because that is what I was doing. And that higher degree in clinical research was a big deal in UK, and it got me onto my training job that I wanted to, and ultimately resulted in cochlear implant surgery becoming my thing, because fundamentally I was a surgeon. And so once I got back from research into surgical training, I was the number one guy for cochlear implant surgery. And then in 2008, when we shifted back to India, cochlear implant was still relatively nascent. And there were 2, 3 surgeons, a lot of politics around it. These 2, 3 surgeons were holding the whole story to themselves. But, it was partly, why would they go and train anyone? How would they train anyone? And so they were doing, and very small numbers, but it was really the thing to do. I was the right man, the right credentials, the right training in a city now where this was kind of a need and an opportunity. So it was a need as well as an opportunity for me. So the first few years I was working in hospitals, as primarily doing cochlear implant surgery, and that it was kind of fitting in every way. I was good at it. They didn't have anyone else. And that's how I got involved in cochlear implant surgery. And somehow very early on, maybe just an academic bent of my mind, training and all this was always important to me, although not much of it happened. I would once in a while go and train someone who had started out. And in that sense, I was always a little unconventional from pure private practice perspective. Honestly, I didn't come back to India to do private practice. It was the last thing, and everything else wouldn't work, then I would do private practice, which is what I was doing then. Other things didn't. But it wasn't never a very high priority for me. Okay. And then, somewhere around those times, I connected with you and, through others in this field, the cochlear implants stuff and all. And then I remember I connected once with you when we were thinking of making a film and, around that time. And that's how we connected, because, you were very well known in this whole field of cochlear implants. And I was trying to make a film and do some recordings and do something around in that space. And that went along very well. I had a ride of my time. In 3-4 years, I think I did more surgeries than I would have expected to do in my lifetime. And so kind of, everything happened in a very short, in a very sort of compact time frame. And I don't know, the way I looked at it is, well, if the job is done, then it's done. Like, then what is the point of doing it again? If it's done, then let's do something different. Yeah. And not really that. I think we all get our share of whatever happens to us, and good luck doesn't last a very long time, and it lasts for a certain period of time. But basically, that very high volume cochlear implant surgery over a few years brought me to a point wherein automatically, really, it was no strategy. It wasn't like I was sitting there trying to think of a research idea of making money. Making money was there anyway in plenty. Right. But there was no need to pursue that. It was just that I realized, well, hello, I have a solution to a medical void. There is a void in this treatment option. The old implantee doesn't get an outcome. And I think I can improve his speech outcomes. Right. And once I got, and that was, CSound Live took birth in an effort to improve speech outcomes of a late implantee, a very genuine, real effort from my side. And now I suddenly thought of a way of doing it. I later realized that I could expand it to the purely deaf and dumb community. And therefore, and cochlear implant being a very topical, very sort of newsworthy thing, I realized that I should go into the deaf and dumb space, and then deaf and hard of hearing space, and then come back towards the cochlear implant space again. That was just the way I decided to sort of take CSound Live. And now I was like really sitting with an idea which I just couldn't ignore. I just couldn't ignore for I know it sounds bizarre, but for the benefit of mankind. Like, I had an idea. How can I ignore it?
That's true.
And I thought, sounds bizarre, but like, how can I? But I can't really solve mankind's problems. So I gave myself a tiny, relatively small budget. And I said, well, I'll spend 25 lakhs. And if at the end of 25 lakhs, I get nowhere, then, I just won't do this. But, I had spent hardly 5 lakhs that I got a grant from the government, which was a big stimulus. They subsequently paid all very late, and they are yet to pay. But that stimulus and that attention and that recognition that big government committees loving your idea, I thought, well, I can't ignore it. Now it's got sort of certified that it's a good thing. So so then it just carried on, and one grant led to another grant, led to an angel investment, and now we are here 2.5, 3 years later, and we have a second version of our product, which is looking very good. I love it. I genuinely, not because I have made it, but because I see value in it. And they may not be, and they may or may not be commercial value, and they may or may not be, the current version may or may not be the final version. Well, it most likely will not be. But I have to sort of, fly this plane, or, go on this ship, because otherwise it will die. It hasn't really come to a point where it will live, even if I don't take interest. And so that's where we are today.
One of the things which, because we spoke about, CSound Live, how it will change things. Also, I know what CSound Live is. Do you want to explain like what CSound Live actually is, to the audience?
Okay. So CSound Live is an application that aims to empower a deaf and hard of hearing person to develop speech. So a child or adult who is deaf, his primary disability is the fact that he cannot hear sounds. However, as a result of this primary disability of deafness, he ends up not being able to speak, when fundamentally he has the ability to make a sound. So he can say things, but because he's deaf, he's not able to improve on his ability to make sounds. Because fundamental to learning to speak is to be able to hear yourself. Because when you say a sound, if you don't hear yourself, you cannot improve on what you're saying, change or modulate what you're saying, and therefore you're not able to speak what you want to speak. So what happens therefore is that a deaf person ends up not being able to speak at all. In the last 100 odd years of science, this has not been solved, because a deaf person cannot hear himself, and therefore he's not able to develop speech. Now, it is important to understand that script or text or image cannot substitute hearing. Because when you hear, what happens is that a sound input goes into your inner ear, it gets decoded into various frequency components, and that data set goes up to your brain. So if I show someone a script or a word or a photo, this is not going to happen. The decoding cannot happen. So what happens in CSound Live is that when the person tries to speak something, his speech output, now it cannot get into the ear because the person is deaf, but the decoding that the inner ear does is done by the algorithm on the phone, and it converts the speech into its various frequency components, not in the auditory format, but in the visual format. And once it does it in the visual format, the brain receives this data set through the eyes, because the eyes can see things. Now, this is a scientific way of putting it, but essentially what happens is, and an example will explain it better, when a small child tries to say ma, he tries to say ma, and a normal hearing person will hear ma and know that he said it right. A deaf person might say ma, or he might say ba or boo or b, and because he's not hearing it, he doesn't get a sense of whether he said it right or not, and therefore he gives up on this. Now, what happens in CSound Live is, when he says ma, he sees a pattern. When he sees a pattern, he gets some sense that he has said something, which this pattern reflects. And that is the initial concept that we get cleared. Now, when he says mu, me, me, or ba, or everything other than ma, the pattern keeps changing. And when he says ma, he recognizes the pattern again. Now, if you think about it, this child who earlier, when he just said there was no sound, is now aware that his has a sound to it, albeit the visual format. And so he now knows that he can make 3 different sounds because they have 3 different patterns. And so we have empowered a deaf person to be able to speak a sound and have feedback as to what he spoke and how well he spoke. So it always starts like this. You get empowered to speak 1 sound, and then 2 sounds, and then 3 sounds. And once your basic fundamental ability to speak a sound different from another sound is established, you start joining them to make bigger words. And thus, using a smartphone application, we can empower a deaf person to develop speech. And strange as it may sound, it's not been done before, but also because the opportunity of carrying a computer in your hand all the time has only happened in the last few years, right? And when this big screen computer come on, when the iPhones got launched, and I know that was about 2008 or 9. So it's hardly been 10 years since this device has come on, and they were also not very smart or clever in the beginning. They were much bigger and they could do much lesser. But now they are ready. And now they are ready. And in fact, receptive language appearing on the smartphone screen is still not in. It is coming. And therefore, it is only obvious that these two will marry in for a deaf person. And a deaf person will therefore be able to develop his speech skill with his visual feedback and learn to start speaking. You know, it is up to our imagination to imagine how far he will go. But, you know, if you ask me today, how does a plane fly? It still sounds impossible. You know, how can you get the damn plane to fly? Who knows? But it all happens because what ultimately we achieve by making a beginning is very impressive. And so I'm convinced that once I am able to solve the basic fundamental building block of how you can learn to speak, the person will deliver a lecture for us tomorrow. What is unknown is whether it's going to happen in my lifetime or in the next, but it will happen. It is just a matter of time. And so that's how CSound Live works.
This is where I know all these people who are watching this, you know, this sounds a little complicated, or, you know, something which probably is not clear. I'll put a link, you know, in the description for the film, which explains, you know, there are animation and stuff also to kind of explain. Also, you will see kids actually talking. So when I went to shoot, you know, so I met kids who were like 7, 8, and I was like, okay, fine, they might have like speech therapy and everything. And then I figured they never had any speech therapy before that. And then I met a 12-year-old boy who's also there in the film. He never had any kind of formal therapy or anything. And he's now able to speak. It's not just producing sounds. And so for me, to be very honest, that was the time when I thought, okay, so this works. You know, before that, I mean, obviously, you know, somebody who created this will say this. So, you know, so I think this particular project of yours, it's happening in multiple stages. Once it happened in your mind, the first time when you thought about this thing, then it happened in the lab. Then what was the time when you got the confirmation? Like for me, it was that moment, you know, when I heard somebody actually speaking, you know, that person said, khana do, ball do, or apni sister ka naam liya, you know, and he expressed in words, you know. So what was that moment for you when you knew that you have done something amazing?
Yeah, so you know, the same kid, I know this kid very well because he was approaching about cochlear implants and whatever else in the beginning, and I know for a fact that he had no speech at all, nothing. He did not use sound at all. I know it. Like now,
how old was he when he came to you?
I think 9 to 11, and then again came 11 to 12, somewhere there. And he had just missed the boat of cochlear implants and everything else there. And his father really confirmed to us that he didn't make a sound because it had no relevance to his life. And, you know, when it's only a case study to describe how it works. And a case study in the scientific community is a very weak evidence, because someone who's reading the case study keeps worrying if this is all cooked up or if it is real or not real. But for me, who's actually seen the kid, you know, reporting to myself, so as me reporting on this product to myself, I know this guy was doing nothing. And now in our clinic itself, he said pa, you know, quite nicely, because he practiced in front of us a few times. And then our clever audiologist made him say pa twice. And he said pa, pa. And the papa was like, wow, he has finally said a word. So he was definitely the first case study which really convinced me that, you know, there is enough here. You know, this is enough for me to develop this. You know, the first prototype of anything from a plane to a cochlear implant to anything only takes 2 steps. I mean, it just flies. The first plane went, I don't know, 100 meters maybe. So it all starts like this. And therefore, I just have to keep going. And convinced in the ability of our own brain to fill in the blanks, I was like, this will work. We just have to stick in it, and I have to stay in it long enough and keep it alive long enough for it to become a commercial product which is available to man. And of course, the recognitions and the prizes and the grants, and they help, because once in a while you keep thinking, I don't know where to go. And as I went along, I think the scientific community in India is relatively different to scientific communities in the West. And I realized that the hard way, because I think we are a very economic driven country. So I realized as I went along that I got a prize for being an entrepreneur, but I have only spent money. Like should an entrepreneur not be making money? I really am only a scientist, and I'm getting forced into the world of entrepreneurship. Where they say, well, if your scientific discovery is not going to make money, then what will we do with it? But I'm like, well, that's not my job. I mean, did I go to a business school? What do I know how to make money? Someone else should do that. I really am confined to the world of surgery and science, because those are the two things that I've spent my entire life doing. So I think, and now I'm kind of maybe I'm trying to extricate myself out of that. I'm saying, I don't want to do entrepreneurship. But it seemed like the best thing to do. I mean, to get a prize for entrepreneurship when I haven't made money. I thought, well, they want to give me a prize, I think. They just wanted to give me a prize, and the government, and they don't have a prize for a scientific invention, so they give me one for entrepreneurship. I think that's what it is. Because, where have I made money? So, but I think they say, well, you will make money. So I said, okay. But now I feel that, that's, I don't know, I've not been good at making money. It's just not been one of my strengths. I live a good life, like I just have had money. So let's not get into that. But what I'm saying is, it's not been my strength. It's not like I made billions or I've got massive practice and a lot of people following me. I think my practice and everything is super scientific and super accurate and super transparent. There are no gimmicks here. It's just the right thing, and that's not maybe the best way to sort of do clinical practice in a scenario, in a private case scenario. If a patient really found out my genuine intentions, I would have the longest queue of patients outside. But they don't, right? They don't know. They don't know. They think I'm lying. So so I think I feel that that's what I am. That's I'm really working in developing science, and I'm doing entrepreneurship because that is the only way to keep my science alive.
This actually reminds me of the conversation we had, when we were talking about this whole brand, how to build this, how to take it to multiple people. And you told me, you said, listen, I want to sit in the lab with white coat and I want to just develop this. I want to create like the next version of it. I'm busy. You telling me, what should be the costing, what should be, what should we do in the rural areas and how, I remember this, so one thing which I want to ask, because there were a lot of developments in the between, and then things changed. You're also like now putting a curriculum in this app. So where is this? Where is CSound Live? What stage it is right now? How ready it is for the? I mean, I know that it was ready last year also when we were doing the film and people were using. What is the stage right now it is at?
So our experience over the last 1 year of a lot of users in Rajasthan and Delhi, like our total user base is good and bad users, all kinds of users, but it's more than 1,000. And the feedback we got was a lot. And we have the core technology has still not changed, and therefore the images that you see are the same. But the basic building block is the same, but CSound Live version 2 has a very, very different application process. So the app has changed, although the fundamental building block in the app remains the same. And it has improved a lot. So, and I'll give you an example of how one, and this was an input that I had received very early on. One day I want to call that person and tell her that, listen, she's gone now, but it was an input that I had got earlier on. So, and that was essentially, what used to happen right now is that when a person would say a sound, he would see the sound, and then he would say it again and see it again. And that is how it was. And the big difference now is that when the person says a sound, he sees it and then it stays in the screen. And when you say it again, it again stays in the screen. And then it again stays. 6 times it stays. And it's almost like a recall. And when I'm trying to say, if I want to say Chang, and I say Kang and Chang, then I can recall Kang, right? And how it is different from Chang and Bang. So we need recall. And my product was taking away recall. And it's visual, right? So I have now put in visual recall, because every time you say it, you see it different. And so when you say it right, you see it right. When you say it wrong, you see it wrong in real time. And I've introduced this conceptual mode because I realized that if you get the concept, it all works. So there's an intro level wherein you say the same sound. One is you say any sound and see an image come alive, and then say another sound and see the image come alive. And so you realize that, okay, a sound becomes an image. And then it's like, say any sound, or so that's any sound. And then it says the same sound again. Try and say the same sound again and again. And so you say the same sound, the same image keeps appearing. And the moment you change the sound, the image changes. And you can compare them in live. So what it has allowed me to display it to the trainer as well as a user much better. And the concept is getting across much better. And then it's like, say different sounds and see different images. And therefore, this fundamental concept by putting multiple images has, I think maybe I get excited about it, but maybe it's not such a big difference. But
it does sound, makes a lot of sense, because I'm also trying to compare, what I saw, and I'm thinking now, brain also has not just reference for this particular sound, but also what I am doing, changing here, what changes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So I mean, that's exactly the kind of reaction I would expect. But I think you know the subject well. You kind of obviously you're one step ahead. So that is a huge. So that was an technically easy step to do, because it's just the layout of the app which I had to change. So the product has this core engine, which is the algorithm, and then it's got this UID, which is the layer on top. But changing the layer on top is also really important for the whole functionality of the. But the core engine has to improve. Certainly, in my mind, it has to improve. And I'm not winning there in India with respect to improving the core engine technology. And whilst we are working with a university in Chennai who are working on it, but it is too slow, too little for me. I feel that a lot more has to be done, and much more in a much shorter span of time. And so that is one aspect, which is so the current version has the CSound Live version 2 is a very different look and feel. It's much nicer as a product, and but the core engine is the same. But we are working very hard on creating a team which will improve the core engine. Now, one of the things that we need to improve the core engine is a very switched on user base. And it took me quite a bit of time to understand this, but my ideal user base at this stage to start with is a literate deaf and hard of hearing person, and not an illiterate one. And unfortunately, in India, all deaf and hard of hearing are illiterate. And I didn't know that. They don't know how to read and write, because there are not enough people who know sign language. There isn't an Indian sign language. It is coming up now. And so there's no formal way of communicating with the deaf and hard of hearing. And if obviously you can't communicate with them, how can you teach them much? And therefore, because you can't teach them, they are illiterate. So my initial users of my product need to be literate. The product, they will be the first ones to, now having said that, we have that user who's doing well. So I'm not saying this will not happen, but in an ideal case scenario, if I had literate, those who can read and write deaf people who are trying to now speak, is the ideal scenario. And both from a technology development perspective, as well as the literate deaf and hard of hearing user, they are both available very happily and with a lot of interest, with a lot of funding opportunity in the United States of America. So,
Yeah.
so but that is the reality.
Right.
And I mean, in a way, it's been nice that I have so far confined myself to India and reached this point, because I didn't know this. I mean, until I reached across 1,000 odd users, I didn't know this. Maybe I should have known, but I didn't. And so now, going forward, we are so as a scientist, now the commercials are one side, but I need to be working with a much more devout technology person, as well as a user base which is literate. And so I feel that I will, one way or the other, find my way to US, where I will try and engage users as well as technology partners. And I'm already exploring that opportunity quite seriously.
Interesting. I also want to understand, who all, because it's an assistive technology, right? So what kind of support is required for the candidate along with this app? Like, do you need like a trained speech therapist? Who can be the person to kind of assist, to the candidate?
Yeah. So the truth is, I don't know very well yet. Whilst it is possible that a very literate, understanding, deaf and hard of hearing person will be able to just do it himself. It's possible. And it's possible that on his own, he'll be able to reach a certain proficiency in speech, but not beyond. And then if he gets some professional help, then he'll be able to build that up further.
Right.
I think that is what the reality is. A child who can understand the concept may be able to develop a certain, but we don't know that yet. We don't know that, because we'll have to really find out, is the brain that clever that it'll pick it up from nowhere and make it, or we will need to train. Now, definitely with training, we know that works. So in the cochlear implant space, we know that with training, you can get it all,
right.
And so we know for a fact that with a high quality speech training person, we will do very well. And therefore, that's a safe space to be in. But how much you may be able to develop based on, so just to feed you some more information there, the reason why you need a very high quality speech training curriculum in a cochlear implantee is because obviously he's not hearing as clearly as you and me. The cochlear implant hearing is not as clear for multiple reasons. One, because the cochlear implant itself may have limitations, it being a titanium silicon speech processor device, which is integrating into humans, and therefore I told you that the number of points is limited. But also because he's missed a significant part of his auditory brain development. Now in CSound Live, which only works with your visual cortex, that has not happened. The visual cortex is alive and kicking and rearing to go. That visual processing is in fact par excellence. It is a stronger visual cortex.
Right.
And therefore I feel that aspect as a limitation is not there. In fact, we have an advantage.
Right.
Now, whether that is enough to not need a trainer, I wouldn't dare say that. So I would say, no, we should have a trainer. But how much can the child do it on his own and how much a trainer is needed is probably an unknown science yet. And it's only time will tell, if this technology gets taken up significantly as to what was the reality. You just give this tool and they just do it, or you would. So we would currently be very keen that a teacher of the deaf is involved in supporting the child, and which would anyway naturally happen because these children are in schools with teachers. Of course, the teachers are focusing on subjects and not training you to speak. And now we are saying, well, add another subject, speech. Now, if you go to a deaf university in US, they are already talking about bilingual, but I think what they mean is sign language and English. And they're not imagining that it could be spoken English. I'm saying, no, we should have sign language and spoken English because I think it can be done. And and I feel that, you know, a deaf person with sign language is is absolutely fine. You know, I think we shouldn't get stuck on the concept that we have to treat them. You know, they are deaf and that's fine. And they are entitled, and they have a sign language, and we should learn sign language to communicate with them. But I just think if they could learn a bit of spoken English and we could learn a bit of sign language, we'll have 70 million more people in the world talking to us. You know, and that has to happen. And so my thing in this space is that you learn some spoken language and I learn some sign language. And you couldn't learn spoken language so far, but now you can. So go ahead.
No, you
And
can.
it's not medicine or surgery. It's a phone that you are anyway using. You know, I'm not saying do anything that is different. You're a phone which you're anyway using. Literally, you can understand the concept, and if you like it, give it a shot and develop a spoken vocabulary. But I think we have a long way to go before this becomes the voice of a lot of people in the world, so that the 7 billion people who live in the world will hear it. Right now, it's like saying, you know, it's like if anyone told you a plane will fly when planes never flew, you know, and no one would believe you. And it is in that space. I remember I saw you know, a story of it's like a commercial on Mercedes, and I don't know whether this was right, true or false, but there was a story of the first Mercedes car, which looked like a horse carriage without the horse, because there was a little engine. And this lady is driving it through a village. And, you know, there are little girls who look at that and it's like a horse carriage and there's no horse. And they think, and witch, it's a witch who's flying through, you know, and they run in and say, the witch, there's a witch who's flying through. And no one can believe it, you know, but in fact, that was the first sort of car that went through a city. So people would be in complete disbelief when you are saying something which has not happened. But hopefully this disbelief will give way to, you know, belief. And that's not going to happen that easily. And I'm realizing more and more that whilst there is a huge need that I can fulfill with CSound Live, there isn't a market. You know, there's no market. And, you know, this is like one of those MBA jargon that I found useful. There is a need, but there is no market, because the market will appear when people believe that the need can be fulfilled with the product. And so so it's very early days. And I think we are sort of doing something in India. We want to start doing something in the USA, and then we sort of grow.
Also,
and, you
as
know,
you mentioned earlier, that, you know, to kind of develop it, you need like a good user base also, right? It's also like good for the product to kind of have that user base.
Yeah, exactly. You need that right user base for the product to see the light of day. You know, if you have the wrong user base, the product may not see the light of day, and even though it would have. So I have to be careful there, and therefore I'm thinking, you know, I need to think. So it's not like, you know, we're just going off the US, but it's it is a thought, a very important thought.
Also, like what I'm understanding with this is also like there is a lot of changes required, or changes might also be like a big word, but a lot of infrastructure is required in this country as we speak, right? Because I have seen the status of deaf schools. It's quite bad. They just, I mean, unfortunate. I'm not talking like for 100% of it, but majority of it. I have been to a lot of these schools. I don't even know what they're trying to achieve. It's more like that, you know, they need to kind of clear that whole year. They do. I don't know what kind of curriculum, what kind of teachers that we have. Unfortunately, we do not have like a great set of teachers also for you know. We went to one school which was amazing, right? But also because the principal was extremely motivated to kind of do this. She's like connected to each child in that school. But how many of these schools have been open to kind of receive this kind of CSound Live as an app?
Out of about 40 odd schools, there were only 4 or 5 who were genuinely very excited and happy about it. So only 10%, I think. And unfortunately, COVID took away the opportunity there. And now it's reopened. We will obviously go back to those really interested schools. But in the professional community, again, those in the cochlear implant space, audiologists, therapists in the cochlear implant space, of course, there are a few who love it, and others look at it skeptically, and they think, oh, is it, but it's not there in the books. Yeah, of course, it's not in the books. Like, I mean, so so that aspect is there, and then there are one or two organizations which just take it on very, very positively, and they were just, it's almost like I was waiting for it, and thank God it's here now and I can use it.
Wow.
So, but then again, that I haven't been able to get into that space again because of COVID, and now that we are on the verge of launching our version 2, I kind of thought we'll just go with version 2 now.
Amazing. When are you planning to launch the phase 2?
So it's anytime now. So we are like in the final, just the sort of cosmetic, touching it up, and redoing the sort of website to support it. And now we are sort of a combination of factors, but we are now launching it more. We're going to work more as a product company, so research and product, and not someone who does trials and uses and uses. You see, because one of the problems there is that even though I have 2 reports of 1,209 users, the statement on conflict of interest is too strong. I have made the product and I sell it to make money. So like that just doesn't. So there's no point me doing any more trials with it. Right. I'm convinced enough to devote my life to it. So I'm going to make the product, and I'm going to make it better and better and better. And I'm going to now offer it so we're going to offer it to professionals free of cost, and to trials almost free of cost if required. And we want to encourage the professional community to use it as part of trials, and then see for themselves what they get out of it. Sure. And we'll tell them whatever we know of it, and they can add more of whatever they want to. And so that's a new model wherein professionals and trials and universities and people like these will get it for free. An individual user might pay something for it, and so that's how we're going to launch it. So yeah, so I'm hoping that a lot of people will get hold of it. They will be able to play with it, and a lot more people, and that has to be worldwide. So right now it can happen for English.
Yeah, so where can people find more information about the launch of the phase 2, like on your website, or where can people get in touch with you?
So our website is kind of in transition as we speak, and like in about the next 2 weeks, CSoundLive.com will have everything on it about the product.
Okay. And what is the way to get in touch with you if there is a hearing health professional who is watching this and they want to understand more about the product and get in touch with you, where they can find you?
I think the simplest would be just email care@csoundlive.com, or sure. My name Shomeshwar@csoundlive.com, and then we will. You won't believe how quickly we'll get in touch with you. So that won't be a problem. I think that's the best way.
I'll put all this information on the video also, and also you will find it all in the link in the description. Just to kind of, we also have to kind of just look at the time. One thing which I always wanted to ask you, and I'm not sure if I have asked you earlier also. If you were to just make one change in this whole infrastructure, because I have heard this, kind of limitation about this limitation about, not being able to do this effectively the way you would want to do in ideal situation. What is that one change that you would like to kind of, if you had the power, what is that one change would you like to make when it comes to hearing health in this whole infrastructure and existing India?
So I think like is common in India in other aspects as well. Right, like today you can apply to get a cochlear implant free of cost, but you can't get a hearing aid for 10,000 rupees for anyone to sponsor. This kind of dichotomy in treatment options is massive. So the simple things should be there in high quality and available where there isn't so much of cost. But I think these are problems of developing countries. But I think the focus has to be on improving the outcomes of the entire deaf community and not just that tiny little percentage that we can really do a good job of. And I feel that's the attitude that the state, the government has to take. You know, every deaf person is really important for us, and to help and get them and get more for them, and not just, you know, rejecting someone because you are 3 years of age or 4 years of age and therefore you're not a cochlear implant candidate. So this kind of a, you know, like you know, you're looking for a coin where you have light rather than looking everywhere to see where the coins may be. And I think this has to be like a, you know, India level change which has to happen when it comes to taking care of our deaf. You know, deaf are can do very well. Even now they can do very well. They can do very well without a cochlear implant, without CSound Live. And now with cochlear implants, you know, speech to text and CSound Live, they can do phenomenally well. And there are so many of them. A lakh are born every year apparently in India. And we shouldn't, you know, we've got to look after them all and give them what they need. If you are deaf, you should have all the options. If a country can afford to give us 7-8 lakh cochlear implant to a few deaf people, it can obviously take care of the others as well who need whatever they need. And obviously that then starts from a great school.
Sure.
And we need to address that. But people don't, like, you know, this somehow disability is not that important to us as a culture today. And I don't know, maybe that's not culture, but the socio-economic scenario. But that is sad, right? That you know, that has to change. You should be able to communicate with a deaf person just like you can communicate with any other person, and, you know, just a little bit of adjustment, and that's it. And I think that has to happen. That fundamentally has to happen. If that was the case, the schools would be much nicer. They wouldn't just be a daycare center that the guy goes, gets lunch and comes back. You know, the main operative word being lunch is available. So I think there's such a big gap there. I'm not very sure how much better it is in the Western world, but I know UK is a lot better. And in the US, the deaf community has such a strong, ironically, voice of their own. And, you know, they like things and they don't like things, and it's all catered to, and it's all looked after. But I suppose, you know, we will get there one day, and we are heading in that general direction. So, but yeah, but it's like a deaf person has to look after, not cochlear implant as an industry or hearing aid as an industry. You've got to do whatever you've got to do for that guy. So that's how it has to go. But I think we're just disjointed. The government is very disjointed in its efforts, and I think probably it's all money driven, and therefore that makes a difference.
I'm very hopeful. I think there is something about, and every time I hear something like a CSound Live or anybody who is like, you have been part of so many other initiatives. I have seen you supporting so many initiatives. Like, you know, when Ritu was coming up with her documentary, you supported her. You know, you have been somebody always supportive of any initiative in hearing health. So I think I'm very hopeful. There are people who will be excited about this as you are, or as I am. I am very excited about CSound Live always, you know, and I wish you all the very, very best. And I'm going to be around, you know, to see the success of CSound Live and these small changes that we really need, you know, around us. I'm very hopeful. Thank you for giving that hope to me and to so many other people.
Thank you very much. It was lovely talking here. It was great.
Thank you. And I will see you soon. Post-COVID, once the vaccine is there, I'm going to come and see you then.
With the mask?
Yes, with the mask. Okay, thank you so much. And I will put in all the information in the, you know, on the screen, also in between the video, and also there will be, you know, there will be a description with the links. And if at all you want to know more, please get in touch with Dr. Shomeshwar. You can also check there. There is a lot of information on the web also on, you know, about CSound Live. They have been covered by media houses. They have been they have been supported by Government of India. So you will find a lot of information, and you can get in touch with us. We also know a lot about them. We have been part of CSound Live for quite some time. So we'll be very happy to you know, give you more information on that. Till the time we come up with another story, take care, stay safe.